me too. And oops, got it. Thanks for recording. It would have been very useful for me, you know, in solving any problems that you kind of run into in any sort of organization. So don't just think about this as far as this project and starting this company or whatnot, but just, you know, whenever you're, wherever your career takes you. Because that being said, I just was going to give a little bit of background on myself and, you know, my career snapshot, if you will. I went to Duke and got a degree in biology. Felt like it was like, you know, science and research is where I wanted to be, although I was always interested in entrepreneurship and innovation in general, but didn't quite, you know, understand what that meant. And I've always had this idea of starting, you know, my own small like companies or and things like that, although and that will come in later. But never really thought that those would cross paths. But luckily out of college, as I was applying to research positions, I came across one that was super interesting because it was a startup company. And so I was like, huh, this is really cool. I don't know anything about this world. And so that was Signature Bioscience, where I started my career. I was about the 15th employee. Interestingly enough, that Charles worked there as well. And we grew that company and got lots of funding and grew it to 250 plus people. And I actually left and went to graduate school and it just all came crashing down. So not a great example of what to do, but it was really an interesting just experience to see happen and to see this growth and funding and stuff like that. So like I said, I left, I went to go get my PhD at UC Berkeley in molecular and cell biology. I was doing very basic science, genetics and development, looking at gene regulatory pathways for heart development. And just really thought I was going down the basic science route, but still had a tinge of, I'd love to start something. And at the time I really wanted to start my own flower design business. So I tried to do that and I did that. I actually worked for a design house and was trying to do my own thing on my own, but that wasn't the right fit for me. So I was like, I got to go back and get my PhD and really be a serious scientist again. But I knew getting out of my PhD, I wanted to go into industry. I really enjoyed my experience at Signature. And so I went to a place called Intelos, where I was a scientist and working collaboratively as you do in industry. And I just really liked a whole team with one common goal and working together. I also wasn't in the lab anymore. It was doing computer modeling work. So that was a benefit to me as well. Like I said, I took some time off, but I still was dabbling, helping, doing consulting projects because I was one of the experts in one of the Intelos platforms, and so kept me going a little bit. But then I joined UCSF and got this opportunity. Again, I've always been interested in innovation and entrepreneurship, and was excited to join the Catalyst team in 2019. And then shortly after that, we started the UCSF Launchpad, which is a program to support and promote student and postdoc trainee entrepreneurship. We have various experiential learning events and whatnot that Nate will talk about later. And so through my role at Catalyst, one of my new things that I decided to do and take on is I actually, one of the previous Catalyst awardees, I continued to support him and his project because I felt very passionately about it. He was an awardee in 2019 when I first started, and we decided to join together and form and incorporate a company based out of his technology called CaptureDX. So I'm living, breathing this life now. So, you know, I have some experience in it and from all different aspects, but it's an ever-changing pathway, like I'm sure many of you will have as well. So that being said, I'd like to jump into what we're going to be talking about today. And for me, I just want to talk about just in general what is needed to think about in order to take an idea into a reality. And one of the main things is customer discovery. And then I'll go through a few more kind of entrepreneurial tools that are often used. So again, UCSF has so much great innovation, so many brilliant ideas. We have amazing, Catalyst applications every year, and so many of them, and all of them are very worthy of funding. And we only get to pick the few, the dozen or so that become Catalyst awardees. But it's really, believe me, on the lines of, cutting edge research. This is a great place to be. I'm actually an SBIR, if you're familiar with it. The NSF offers grant funding for small businesses and ideas, very early stage. So maybe similar to Catalyst. And I would say our Catalyst applications, hands down, are stronger than what I usually see coming into the NSF. So that being said, we have great research, but can it become a product? And so I'm going to use this example that we had a Catalyst awardee come to us with like AI-enabled ultrasound to reduce the number of CT scans. So it's like you can use ultrasound to do the diagnostics if someone is bleeding, instead of using a CT scan, which actually ends up with a lot of kids developing cancer. About 4,000 kids each year will eventually develop cancer directly caused by that scan. And so it seems like a no-brainer, like, of course, like this is a great innovation. And it will also save the healthcare system so much money with these CT scans and the cost to treat cancer. And, of course, why wouldn't we want to do it? And so he was like, help me bring this to the market. And in reality, our advisors didn't really think it would become a viable product, because who's going to pay for this? And, and again, it was for children. So it's not a big enough market. It's just pediatrics. And what's going to drive the hospital to buy this additional product just for this one application? And so it was as much as everyone wanted to support it, it was very much this is never going to go anywhere. So what was he to do? And that's where customer discovery comes in. So you need to figure out, well, first of all, you need to figure out what the problem is that your potential customer has. So if you are going to solve a problem that they have, that they really need a solution to, they're more likely to buy something from you. So you need to figure out what the problem is. And Henry Ford famously said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. What you really wanted to ask them is, what is your main pain point throughout your day? And these people said, getting from A to B just takes so long. I don't have time to do blah, 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 or whatever it is. So need to ask getting at this problem, the main pain points in your potential customer's life is more important than the problem you think you're trying to solve. So you really need to get out of the building, and getting out of the building and talking to potential customers. And that potential customer isn't necessarily going to be, who's going to pay for the product. You have a whole ecosystem of your customer ecosystem, and some of the most important, are, who is going to pay, and the end user, of course, you want to be considerate of what are their needs, what are their pain points, and of course the decision maker, like who's going to decide, say, yes, this is absolutely what we need. So you need to figure out what problem you're solving for them, what problem they have in their daily life that happens all the time, that they are looking for a solution for, but haven't found anything yet. So again, validating the problem, not your solution, but you really need, in order to do this, really need to go, like I said, get out of the building, talk to people one-on-one. You can't do surveys because they're just going to check the boxes that they think they should. Can't do focus groups because there's a lot of groupthink that happens. And so talk to people one-on-one and ask open-ended questions about their day in the life of what they do. Or in this case, using ultrasound, how is that working? Or treating kids for trauma, what is their procedure? What do they do? What's the hard part about it? And then really dive deeper later. So that's what this team did. They did some customer discovery. And, honestly, the lot of doctors I talked to are like, oh yeah, I'm fine doing ultrasound with kids. Like we still have to send it to the CT. So it was really like, they didn't have this pain point. They kind of understood what the value could have been, but it wasn't a pain point. And really what this team initially found, they went to the I-Core program, Innovation Core, which Nate and I will talk about later as well. But the real pain point of the buyers of ultrasound and the people making the decisions about what to buy was completely something unrelated. The hospitals weren't getting reimbursed for ultrasounds exams that were performed. And that was like a huge, billion-dollar, loss, or billions of dollars of loss to hospitals across the nation of not, getting reimbursed because there wasn't the correct workflow for that to happen. Interestingly enough, this team thought, well, maybe our AI technology, we can create that and create a product that will address both. You're going to capture this billing and reimbursement, create more money, and you'll still keep the benefit of reducing CT scans in kids. But wait, I'm not going to lie, they are still working on it. So that was, after talking to a handful of people, but then when you do, it's almost not enough. You need to talk to a wide variety of people. And before building anything, you really need to understand what you're going to build and do the quote unquote cheaper work, which is just a lot of grit and, and human power on the ground of talking to people and reaching out. Want to validate that product before you make anything, because you can spend millions of dollars making something, but it's of no use and no one's going to buy it. So being said, so like I said, this I'm going to give a little bit of timeline on this project and what this means. And these people, this team was a Catalyst awardee in 2019. And they built an AI algorithm with their grant money that they correctly identified the views needed for this trauma exam. So it can literally guide the clinician to the right views for this exam, which is one of the difficult things in children. So they got started on building a product. They did return to Catalyst a year later, kind of to give a project update, reconnect with their advisors. And the advisors were like, there is no way you're going to commercialize this. And so I slightly suggested that they, do some customer discovery. And one great way, there's so many ways, that you can go about this, but it's often nice to have a little bit of structure in place to keep you honest, is the the Bay Area NSF I-Core, so National Science Foundation I-Core program. And that's a monthly program that is run out of Berkeley in conjunction with UCSF and Stanford. And it's all about doing your customer discovery. And like I said, when they went through that, they're like, aha, had this aha moment. It's all about documentation reimbursement. Like, great, so let's do it. And this is where we come in, and we actually, this is a company that I said that we formed and we incorporated in February of 22 recently, expecting to apply for an SBIR. Like we just, we need to go out and, get some funding in order to do this. But as we talked about what we'd be writing about and what our aims are and what our goal is, and it became really clear that we needed more definitive direction. And while we had done some customer discovery work, more is always better and needed to be done. I will say, just to give you a little bit of timeline, I kind of just wanted to, again, weave in my experiences, just because I am living this right now, is there's other opportunities and learning experiences, and really, in order to get this venture, this idea, to better hone this idea and, and make it hopefully successful at some point. And certain things like the Pediatric Device Consortium is a great organization that we have between UCSF and Stanford, and they're good partners with Surgical Innovations. We have a Innovators Forum that happens every Tuesday, 4 to 5 o'clock, that people are welcome to join. I'm glad, I'd be happy to get you in touch with the organizer there just to hear. And like I said, there's usually a company or a project that, that presents every Tuesday, and there's industry advisors talking about, how they can help. But the Pediatric Device Consortium also has an annual pitch competition, which I decided to do an enter for Capture DX, and we ended up winning a bronze prize. So that was lovely. So we have some funding to continue our work, but interestingly enough, again, I still feel the need to do more customer discovery work. We also took part in the UC Launch Accelerator that's also run out of Berkeley for all UC affiliated teams. You can be a UC alumni, a UC student, staff, faculty, and we came in third place there too, which was really amazing. But and I did some customer discovery work during that process, and that's where I really saw that this whole idea of what our value propositions were to our different customers was a little on the fuzzy side. I wasn't getting clear answers, but that was a great experience in being able to put together a pitch deck and as part of that program. And we also made some directional decisions in that program through our customer discovery work. For instance, deciding that the product needs to cover all emergency department ultrasound exams. There's no way anyone's going to adopt a product with just one trauma exam. And then we also looked to how, and I know a lot of teams out there are working on their TAM, SAM, and SOM right now. We were able to do some of the analysis there too, and really felt like our TAM expanded dramatically after talking to some people and realizing the big push for ultrasound to go into family practice. Yet, these people are not trained in ultrasound. So using an AI crutch in order to help them do the exams might be a great expansion indication for us later. But that being said, again, still not fully sure. So I've decided to go, well, we as a team decided to apply to the national program of the NSF I-Corps, which is a 7-week intensive program to really go through more in-depth customer discovery and go through the whole business canvas model, which I'll get to in a second. And it requires 100 interviews. I'm about halfway through it right now, about 51 interviews. And things are ever evolving, and we're learning so much through this experience of what we can do. We started this general like, oh, any emergency department can be our customer, and we've seen the true pain points at these community ED departments now, especially when they have a point of care ultrasound champion there that wants to institute a program for point of care ultrasound, and it doesn't currently exist. So right now, and for those people, they've told us for them, it's just to increase the physician's use, because a lot of older physicians are not confident in using ultrasound because they weren't trained in it. So again, our crutch will be able to help them, a crutch of AI will help them be able to complete these exams in a confident fashion, in a complete way. So, but like I said, talk to me in 3 weeks, and this I'm sure will be changing as well. So what's next for us too, after we're done with I-Corps? Definitely SBIR application, and I should have put a little bit more detail on this, but it's called America's Seed Fund. A lot of Catalyst projects do end up getting funding and exiting through this pathway. For phase 1, you can get up to $260,000, and phase 2, I believe, is $1.2 million. So a total of like $1.5 million of funding that you can get directly from the government, and it's non-dilutive. I mean, they're not taking any stake in your company. So we need to build an MVP, but we're still deciding what that means. And then, because for us especially, any sort of software we've been told needs to have some sort of traction out in reality being used already in order to get any VC funding. So we're not exploring that route yet. And that's why this America's Seed Fund, the SBIR funding, is a great avenue for a lot of projects that come out of academia and get incorporated. But I will say, we say this, hear it a lot, but I truly mean it. Like 99% of this is execution. It's all about the team. It's like 1% of is the idea. I used to worry about telling people about the idea, just worried someone's going to steal it. Honestly, it's probably not going to happen, because it's really more about having the time and having the heart and putting the effort into it, and in the team that's willing to be dedicated to it. So that being said, if anyone has any questions on that stuff, otherwise I'll go right into the business model canvas, and just again a brief overview of a tool that is often used in the lean launchpad approach and doing the customer discovery in order to fill this out. So the business model canvas is a complete alternative to a lengthy, 40-page business plan that people used to write. And all the financials they'd write out, and all, this is what we're going to do here, and this is how we're going to grow. And unfortunately, if you write something that takes that much effort, you're never going to want to change, even though you maybe should, as you find out maybe something's not quite working. And so people will just keep going forward with the plan is, and yet it's not working for them. In order to shift it, they don't want to write a whole new 40-page plan. So the idea around this is that it gets the ideas out on the page, but you can, be more nimble and pivot and change your assumptions of what the customer wants, and what the value you offer to the customer, and which will, completely change your product or how you're going to go about selling it or making it. So here is the business model canvas laid out. Like you see, it's, typically we try to keep it to a 1 page. And the idea is that you put in hypotheses in all of these fields. Like, I think my customer is a, ED physician that doesn't know how to use ultrasound. And then I think my value to them would be this. And then you really have to go out and do the customer discovery to be able to validate that or invalidate that. So you go through a very, scientific way of testing and hypothesizing, testing, and validating or invalidating. And if it's a lot of times you invalidate, and so you change, you iterate, and then you come up with new hypothesis. So, things that we're thinking of, like, again, who are the customers? What are their pains and gains, and what value can you offer? How do they get the product? Do you directly sell it to them, or is it integrated somewhere else somehow? Why will they buy and keep buying your product, and how will they pay for it? So that's kind of on the right-hand side. I don't know if that's looking right. The right-hand side is all dealing with your kind of customers and how you interact with them. On the left-hand side, it's kind of like the backhand side, more the development side. So key partners, and who can you help you, and what do you need to succeed? How do you measure success? How much does it cost? What's your cost structure to actually build your product? So that's kind of all the back end side of things on the left. But what you really want to do is start with the right side, and it really does come down to first defining these two things that I talked about: your customers and your value propositions. And being able to get to that first is the most important key. After that, like I said, do I not have it? Oh yeah, there it is. You kind of, again, start on the right-hand side, going through what channels and what's your relationships. How do you get the customer first? How do you keep the customer? And how do you grow your customers later? And revenue, and how do they pay you? And then all the costs and resources and stuff it does take to build it. So any questions on that was such a brief overview. There are so many different resources out there on the internet that go way more in depth if you want to learn more about the business model canvas. or I'm happy to discuss it with anyone at any point too.
Jenny, there's a question for you on chat.
What are some tips or considerate ways to engage doctors for customer discovery or outside your network? This is very interesting. So cold email with an elevator pitch. So great question, because like I said, I'm living it right now. One good way is to first start with the people you do know, and then have them refer you to someone else and have them refer you to someone else. People are often always willing to talk to you more if they're like, oh, I'll do a favor for my friend. And it can, keep expanding out that way. But that does only get you so far. And I will say, like, we wanted to reach out to people, in the South, people in the Midwest, people in the Northeast, and we didn't have enough connections, especially outside of academia. And what I did, I tried the LinkedIn thing, got the Sales Navigator version, sending lots of emails, and it was chirp, chirp, I got nothing. I actually found a program called Wizza that will extract email addresses out of LinkedIn for you. And I went that route now. And I've actually gotten a great hit rate to random people and random places that have the title that I want. I mean, make sure you're looking for the right title. If you want to talk to a medical director specifically, you search for that. But email for me has worked out to be better, because I think a lot of doctors are not on LinkedIn, that much. Other industries, I think LinkedIn InMails and stuff like that works well, but it wasn't working for me for doctors. So emailing was great. But I will say, I don't do an elevator pitch. I don't talk anything about my product at all. I just say, I'm a student in this National Science Foundation course. I'm reaching out to experts. It's always nice to just say something like nice about them. I'm reaching out to experts to get their opinions on, on point of care ultrasound use in the emergency department. And would you have 15 minutes to chat? And honestly, lots of people say yes. And you can follow up with them if they don't get back to you. You can just reach out to more people. You can also, cold call on the phone and catch people. And so they might just have 5 minutes for you. Surprisingly enough, when people start talking about themselves and their problems, they'll probably talk more than 15 minutes. So that's you can be mindful of their time, but often, like I said, you'll get a lot more out, especially you start open-ended and you can see what their pain points are, and when you're really empathizing with them and having that empathy, I think they can chat more. I literally was on a call with someone the other day who got so emotional and got teary-eyed because she felt so behind the times because she didn't know how to use ultrasound, and just really tapping into that emotion is important. So let's see. We have a few questions. Okay, in terms of finding a question to solve, how do you start from scratch in an area of interest? Yeah, I would say customer discovery. If you are interested in, if you're interested in anything, you can go to a physician and be like, what is your most annoying thing you deal with on a daily basis? That will start getting you ideas even. So you don't even need to, necessarily have it, maybe you have a general direction on, the type of field you want, maybe you want to talk to, I don't know, students about, what their pain points are or whatnot. So you might have a idea of who your customer might want to be, and then go talk to them about their daily life. Okay, any tips on how to deal with potential biases, conflict of interest during validation hypotheses testing? Thanks, Anastasia. Yeah, I guess tips on how to deal with potential biases, conflict of interest. I'm not sure I know exactly what you mean, so if you want to chime in and clarify.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking in terms, if you have if you're working with a company or for a company and they're funding some of their research questions. I mean, some of it is obviously you can do like blinding and some other, rigorous general methods that are, would be applicable for like randomized clinical trials. But I just didn't know if you had any sort of maybe specific experience when you have a company and you're doing research for that company that is funded by the company. You know, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you do need to get out of that network is what I would do. Because I mean, you know, if anyone has any idea about what you're doing, you know, it was a little tricky. For instance, my sister actually is a physician assistant in the emergency room, and it was really hard to talk to her and have her get her friends to talk to me too, because she already told her about what's going on in my life. So I was just like, don't come in with a biased opinion or a thought. Like, I literally, her physician he worked with was like, I think AI is going to transform everything. And people tell you what you want to hear. So in that respect, I would say you need to just reach out of that network, if that makes sense. Am I answering your question though?
I mean, so I think it's, part of it. I guess it's, maybe it's a little bit of a different scenario that I'm perhaps describing, but but yeah, I guess it's just, just when you're doing research that is funded, like if I have a company and I guess I would perhaps have other researchers or hire other researchers. I guess, yeah, this is the tricky part. Like when you're doing research that is funded, and obviously the company has invested interest for certain outcomes of the study, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So like if you have a hypothesis that your device is going to improve patient outcomes, and then when you're actually designing your study, you want to design it in such a way that there is no biases that are going to infiltrate your study design, your outcomes, that is actually going to be answering like the scientific question without any sort of prejudice that's coming from the funding or the company that has obviously a specific interest in specific outcomes, because they're profiting from whether there's efficacy or no efficacy from a device. Sure.
Okay. Yeah, no. So you're kind of talking about like the funding the trials and stuff like that. I mean, I think that, working with organizations like CTSI here, on campus, I think, maybe, working with an outside organization to, validate the fact that, you have an unbiased trial design would be important for that.
Okay.
But yeah, that would be my suggestion for that. I don't know if Rupa or Charles, Nate, if you have any other suggestions. Yeah, and there's statisticians and stuff, again, through CTSI has a lot of consulting services that you can do that double check.
And also like be blinded, right? Like double blinded or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Right, blinding is definitely like an obvious one. I was just curious about like,
and also like fixing your data analysis pre-trial, like what would be considered okay or not, like so that there's no manipulation after the fact.
Right. Okay. Sounds good.
All right, let me go down to oh yeah, and Andrew, just whiz it here. Let me type it in. And like I said, there's many others. My colleague is using a different one too, but it's been amazing for me. Let's see. If I understood your reimbursement problem, your reimbursement problem isn't one of your customer insurance companies, and then also a weird snag. How did you interview or get insurance companies? Oh, insurance companies. Yeah. Customers. Okay, gotcha. Isn't one of my customers insurance companies? Yes and no. So it's interesting. I have a little bit of a different issue with that. Insurance companies do reimburse for ultrasound exams. So I actually don't have to deal with creating a new CPT code or anything. It's the hospitals that don't bill for it because they don't have a way. There's a certain standards that need to be met as far as the images being archived, and that's the main one, being complete, images being complete, quality, and archived. And so all of those, that process and getting that into the EHR and then getting that to the coders and billing department is where it breaks down. The actual reimbursement codes are already there in place, and so it's not necessarily something that I would have to deal with an insurance company. So I don't know if you have a different follow-up question as far as dealing with insurance companies. Typically, when we talk about reimbursement, we also, refer Catalyst interns and awardees to reimbursement advisors and specialists. So there's and they can tell you more about how to create new codes and what that means and what that process is. And unfortunately, I don't know much of that process at all. Okay, great. Wow, I am running a lot later on time than I thought. I was going to go through a pitch deck, but I may go through it really quickly, just to give you an idea, and you can use this as a reference if you're ever wanting to put a pitch deck together. And I'm missing a slide here. And basically, a lot of this work that you're doing with the TPP, all of that information that you're putting there, work that you do with customer discovery work, all of that can come together and put together a pitch deck. And the pitch deck is a tool that companies often use, to pitch to VCs, but there's also, pitch competitions, and it's really a succinct way, a few-minute way to explain what the problem is that you're solving, why you're the right people to do it. Again, convincing them that there's a problem, huge problem, and your solution is the best way to solve it. And then you can also make money along the way. So you can get investment. So again, you can use this as a reference if you're ever looking to create a pitch deck. But these are overall, people don't follow this to the T, but overall the things that you should include in a pitch deck. So some sort of, you start out with a logo and just say what you are, what your purpose is. And then you need to have a hook. So know your audience, so surprise them with a cool fact or interesting story or something that really pulls at their heartstrings. So, for instance, this, meet Michelle. She's been struggling with insomnia because she's a medical student and really, has, can't, get her passing grades or whatever you want to say. So pull something in that people will relate to and they understand that there's a problem out there in the world. And again, you can really talk about your customer discovery here, talk about what you heard out there. Any statistics is often helpful too, like you can see here over on the right, but keeping it very focused and clear and succinct. Talk about the business opportunity. A lot of you are going through this. What's the TAM, SAM, SOM? And the investors going to want to know, and some of these, again, they're hypotheses, but if they're, reasonable, they make sense from, a sniff test, it gives a good sense. It doesn't need to be exact, but it does give them, an idea on the potential return on investment that they would be making. And then of course your solution. So you don't start with the solution. This is halfway through. Start with the problem and how big that problem is. But then here's your solution, any diagrams, mock-ups, any demos, that type of thing is always helpful. Little wireframes, little story frames, whatever. Then you can talk about your target market. Who is your customer? Again, you can talk about your ecosystem, who's a user versus a customer, who's going to be buying it, who's going to be using it. And then of course, competitive landscape. Again, another TPP field. Comparison charts can be really helpful. You can show all the features yours does, and then the other alternative solutions out there, may not hit all of those boxes. Another way to do it is, often there's a pedal way where you can talk about, well, these people do this part great, and these people do this part great, but no one does them both. So kind of like Venn diagrams, if you will, with lots of different Venn diagrams. And then should talk financials at some point. How are you going to be making money? You can, typically go out and, what are again, competitive landscape, what are they doing, and just really think about just, kind of bottoms up, what would you charge and how are you going to make money? And then a go-to-market strategy. So who is your beachhead market? Who are you going after, the first indication? How are you going to expand into different markets after that? And how are you going to reach these people in general? And then lastly, your team. I mentioned this before, but it is, 99% of team's execution, only 1% of the idea. And it's always great to have a compelling closing too about saving the world. So, all right, I think that's it on my side. If anyone else has any other questions, I'm happy to answer them now, or, of course, always reach out, and we can chat or email or whatnot. So, all right, thank you.
Hey, Jenny, I have a quick question. You mentioned how the old-fashioned business plan that's not really used that much anymore was 60 pages, and it, it's sort of suppressed keeping updated. And you mentioned this business canvas model, and I was looking at it, and is the idea that would be a one-page thing that you like almost like a poster, or is that just like a representative of the concept, and it might end up being, whatever, not 60, but 3 or 4 pages to capture all 7 fields? Or do you try to get it on one piece of paper?
You try to get it on one piece of paper. You really want to be able to hit like what the main, what's your main value proposition. I actually struggle with this because I'm like, well, our product is this and this and this and this, but trying to get it a little bit more coherent and say, I have these these 3 really important customer segments, and these are the very important value propositions to those customer segments.
And so you might, if you're visiting a fund, like a venture capitalist or a funder of some sort, you might leave it. I mean, you'd have copies of it that you'd leave with her or him, possibly.
I don't know if it's something that I've never heard about it being left, but yes.
Oh, I see.
I mean, I do think that it's, versus like a TPP is like one of those documents where, and not that you would necessarily leave that, although I think that we've heard previously that it would be very beneficial. That's very, expansive or, well thought out, written out. The business model canvas tends to be, it's important to know your value props and have them, quantitative, and have them, and to try to validate them. But, there's still always hypotheses, and you can still always do more validation. I think typically more people put those ideas into a pitch deck, and just so they really hit on the important ideas of what the benefit of their product is.
Got it. Thanks.
But, okay. Perhaps there's certain people that leave the business model canvas. It's more of a tool to be able to think through your thoughts.
Got it. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I will turn it over to Nate, who will talk about our I&E entrepreneurial, or I&E resources that we have available here and beyond.
Great. Thank you, Jenny, and fantastic presentation. And shout out to all the different questions that were asked as well. I feel like everybody did a very good job and we're very engaged in this conversation. All right. So yes, my name is Dave Prorock. I'm the co-director of the Launchpad and senior program manager of the Catalyst program, overseeing the digital health track with Jenny. And it's my pleasure to share with you today the myriad of I&E resources within UCSF, the UC system, as well as the Blackstone Launchpad network that UCSF is a part of and beyond. Next slide, please. UCSF's I&E ecosystem is very diverse, unique, and matrix. For someone entering the sequence system, they see this graphic and they may think it's like a treasure map. There's both clinical and system innovation, as well as product innovation, in-house think tanks, accelerators, and several funding groups. Each entity operates independently and in many ways entrepreneurially, which has worked pretty well for each entity. Consequently, we've taken it upon ourselves to leverage the individual strengths of each entity in such a way that they can become greater than the sum of their individual parts. Next slide. And so given that the majority of the attendees here tonight are Catalyst awardees or Catalyst interns, I presume they're quite familiar with the Catalyst program. So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit more about the UCSF Launchpad. Next slide. The Launchpad was founded at UCSF and the other UCs in August 2019 with a grant from the Blackstone Charitable Foundation. The Launchpad supports and promotes the entrepreneurial mindset, process, and tools in students and trainees, regardless of career path, on the 46 campuses worldwide with the Launchpad. So this includes over 1 million students and trainees. So it's very vast and tons of resources. The Blackstone Launchpad Network makes entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial skills accessible and relevant for all students and trainees to help them build thriving companies and careers. Jenny and I put on many events, competitions, workshops, as well as offering mentorship and coaching. Next slide. And one of our signature programming are the fireside style chats we host. And everyone here, as well as people in your network, are certainly invited. The next iteration of this will take place on Thursday, August 18th, just pretty much a week from today, with Dr. Jess Krieger, CEO and co-founder of Ohio Valley, a cultivated steak company. She is one of the cultivated meat industry's earliest pioneers and was the first scientist in the world to build a career exclusively in cultivated meat. In 2020, Dr. Krieger founded Ohio Valley to develop the world's first cultivated Wagyu ribeye and other beef products. Now, so cultivated meat, it's if you guys aren't familiar with it, it's also known as cultured meat, is genuine animal meat, including seafood, that is produced by cultivating animal cells directly. This production method eliminates the need to raise and farm animals for food. Cultivated meat is made of the same cell types arranged in the same or similar structures as animal tissues, thus replicating the sensory and nutritional profiles of conventional meat. So right now in chat, I'm going to put the sign up for this link. Hopefully everyone, if you're interested in learning more, please click there. Please sign up if you're interested. So to learn more about her groundbreaking research, her perspective on the cultivated meat industry and career journey, please click that link and sign up today. All right, next slide. Another example of our signature programming includes the Launchpad Ideas Competition. So this is one of those that's with all the Launchpads across the country. So students and trainees from all of these 46 Launchpad universities submitted applications for the inaugural competition last fall, and it's happening again this fall. Of the many applications within UCSF, these 4 unique and innovative projects ranging from novel housing prototypes, a therapeutic intervention to mitigate oocyte damage, and a wearable medical device to detect early-stage breast cancer were awarded $1,000 each and moved on to the national round to compete against the top projects from all Launchpad universities. Next slide, please. And at the national round, Scott Harris was the healthcare winner for his project that translates vision into sound. This was truly cutting-edge technology with exceptional promise that will hopefully bring sight to the millions of people worldwide who suffer from blindness and visual impairment. And, I believe that there are tons of different ideas that are floating around our heads. And so we highly encourage you guys to start thinking about these. And if this is something that interests you, please stay tuned for more in September. Next slide. So another really cool event that we put on is the iHack Health Apathon. This is this past fall late fall leading into early spring was the second one we did, and we do it in collaboration with UC Berkeley's Fung Institute as well as Apple. So for this event, the way it works is that UCSF clinicians, faculty, students, and trainees submit their ideas for an iOS health app. Then we recruit UC Berkeley engineering students to develop the UCSF clinician ideas into apps. And it's worth pointing out that all winning apps were medical residents or students. So very much a lot of the people here on this call. And the winning projects were some really cool stuff and included an AI dermatological diagnosis app, an app that combines personal health and location data to inform health interventions, and a next generation telestroke app. So if this is something that interests you, please stay tuned for more also later this fall. Next slide, please. And additionally, we host a health and life sciences startup career fair attended by leading biotech and medtech startups looking to attract top talent. So the event includes booths from all the startups and virtual networking sessions with founders and other attendees. Next slide, please. So before I get too far and too deep into this presentation, I really wanted to highlight Startup Tree, because this is where all of these events that I'm saying, oh, stay tuned in September or late fall for more information, everything will be on Startup Tree. And you've probably all heard of Startup Tree, or the majority of you, because this was the platform that all the interns used to apply for the Catalyst Summer Internship. And we're proud to say that UCSF is still the fastest growing and highest performing instance on the platform. And one way to think of Startup Tree as like a LinkedIn, Eventbrite, Google Forms, Submittable, and several other versions all rolled into one. Right, next slide, please. So not only does UCSF Startup Tree contain all of our events, competitions, jobs, internships, webinars, mixers, et cetera, but the platform also hosts all these opportunities for other universities and other entrepreneurship ecosystems. So whether it's at the University of Central Florida or the University of Southern California, so many different schools and ecosystems have a Startup Tree that have opportunities that are open to the public, really. And another great resource of Startup Tree is that there's lots of coaching and mentorship available. Right, next slide, please. So if you haven't done so yet, please sign up for Startup Tree. It's tons and tons of resources there, and they're continually refreshed. I'll also put the link for Startup Tree in chat for anyone who's interested. All right, next slide, please, Jenny. And another thing we've done is we've hosted startup weekends where aspiring entrepreneurs can experience the fun and intensity of startup life in a 3-day program. And, you know, one of the things that we've learned is that oftentimes students, postdocs, medical residents, clinical fellows at UCSF, because of their interest in the health and life sciences, they're not necessarily interested in general entrepreneurship workshops as much as events that are more finely catered to their interests and backgrounds. So we expanded to a health tech startup week with all the elements of the original program, though we made it over 7 days as opposed to 3 to allow for better balance with all the different lab or clinical time or just expectations that are on the UCSF clientele. Okay, next slide, please. Blackstone Launchpad offers a very competitive and catalyzing fellowships for students in the network as well. You can think of this as a 8-week training program with $5,000 worth of funding to work on your project. And on the next slide, you'll be able to see some of the UCSF winners. You know, there's John Wang, who started this really cool mental health app. There's Nikki, who's pivoted a couple times for her important information about me health solutions, as well as Stephen Greenwich, who has this really cool physical therapy, digital health rehab program. And from what we've seen, Jenny and I, of the students that kind of translate their ideas through the Launchpad, but you know, starting at say a startup weekend, and then they're like, oh, okay, let me learn a little bit more, and then they go to one of these, or they sign up for the fellowship and they continue to work their idea, just like Jenny was talking about in her presentation, where you start with this idea, you just keep on working it, you know, not also dissimilar from the TPPs. You know, you're looking at the competitive analysis, or you're looking at the regulatory concerns, and you just keep on working these ideas, which is something that we've seen with our students. And the way they continue to learn and grow has been truly inspiring. Next slide, please. And so as you know, you're working yourself through the fellowship, and then there are tons of, you know, conferences and pitch competitions where, you know, it's not just the you know, the $5,000 for your 8-week training program, but you can get up to $50,000 now in prizes. Or if you like have major success in the demo day, there's, you know, up to $100,000 in prizes available. So to really kind of develop and continue these ideas is exactly what the Launchpad is here for. All right, next slide. There's also tons of conferences that could be very helpful for you all in your entrepreneurial journeys. So this past year, or I guess not even year, just a couple months ago, it seems like, Jenny and I, along with several student founder teams, we attended the Startup Grind and TechCrunch conferences, and it was really a cool opportunity for the students to learn more and be immersed in the giant tech ecosystem here in the Bay Area. All right. And so now transitioning from specific Launchpad stuff to just greater Bay Area stuff. Every month, the NSFI Core offers an immersive 1-week virtual training aimed at translating academic research into a startup. Participants learn how to conduct 15 customer interviews to identify top customer segments and value propositions, validate the commercial market, and accelerate finding product market fit. So Jenny was talking about this a lot, and we definitely want to encourage it to you guys as well, because there are some deadlines coming up that you'll see on the next slide. Oops, excuse me. I should have taken this slide out. This is my apologies. Looks like this one's the application is closed, but take a look, click on the link. I'll add it to chat as well, because as I mentioned, it happens every month. Next slide, please.
Yeah, and as you can imagine, it's pretty similar. It's like end of the month application for the upcoming dates.
Yeah, so our contact here is David Weiner, and I'm also adding his email into chat if you have any questions there. All right, next slide. All right, and another fantastic resource is UC Launch. This is an accelerator based out of Berkeley. It's a 3-month UC-wide, so students, faculty, alumni, trainees, postdocs, tons and tons of customer interviews you got to do to apply, but there's lots of money available in funding. So this is another resource that could help you all on your entrepreneurial journeys. And we'll close out with a final slide that we hear about. Another final resource is the Big Ideas Contest. So this is an early stage innovation competition open to all UC students. And, this one's not just in healthcare. Over the last couple of years, they've trended a lot of healthcare projects, mostly around COVID-19, but there's energy, there's financial, there's education stuff. So tons and tons of information and opportunities for us to grow our ideas. And we've seen some really cool ideas come out of the Big Ideas competition. So again, another fantastic resource in the competition for you all. All right, so what's next? You just presented a ton of different information, and I'm not going to remember it. So I have a few things to say to that. First, this is recorded, so you can come back, you can take a look at the recording. 2, it's on Startup Tree. Everything we have, we're going to put on Startup Tree. So go there, sign up, become a member, and keep on checking what's happening. And then finally, you're more than welcomed and encouraged to reach out to us, myself, Charles, and Jenny. We're here with the Launchpad to help guide you and connect you to these resources based on where you are in your journey. All right, and then the final slide, it kind of shows a high-level version of a bunch of the different things that I spoke about. And again, we'll share these slides with you so you can kind of keep an eye on your calendar as all these things are coming up. But again, everything will be on Startup Tree, so keep an eye on that as well. All right, and I'd like to open for any questions if anyone has something to share or a question about a specific event or these resources in general. Great.
I had a quick question. So I wasn't sure if you had an entrepreneur in residence program per se, or whether, we could get advice in terms of, how to connect with people who might be able to help develop the business side of, kind of our technologies.
Hey, Rupa, if Rupa's on the call, Do you want to tackle that since you deal with, there's actually, Nori, there's actually, there's a really active entrepreneur in residence program going on right now.
Nori, let me see. We do have an entrepreneur in residence program. There are two ones. There's one run by Office of Technology Management and Advancement, and also with the Invent program, to really help spin out companies, to help raise VC funding, and to look at your business model. Is that what you wanted, or can you just reframe your question?
I guess it's, we don't have a business model right now. So I think it would be in the realm of, I was very gratified to see Jenny's kind of newer business canvas kind of thing, which is a lot easier, as Charles mentioned, than the 60-page, traditional thing.
Yeah.
But, kind of developing that in the first place, and then, having someone who might be able to help guide us, become, the first CEO of the company.
That is the Entrepreneur in Residence program. And one of the ways that you can deal with that, means we can of course talk later also, is like if your project, do you have a case manager at OTMA?
Yes. Oh, yes. She just changed, but yeah.
Means you want to speak to her to also connect you to Dasha, because if they think the project is promising, and I know you have two projects, and one of them is that RRV platform, right?
Right.
And that could be something definitely to think about, if they can get an EIR, but you also want to be careful it's an EIR who can contribute, but also understand the background and everything. And this is a little off subject, but there is someone right now who has a lot of oncology experience, who may be joining as an advisor. So we could even present it to that person, just to see if the person is interested.
Right. Yeah. No, that would be great. It's just kind of, I was wondering what the procedure is. Do we pitch to kind of candidates the Catalyst might suggest, for the EIR?
No, it is a lot of the EIR program goes through the Entrepreneur in Residence, and this is something I haven't even discussed with Charles or the Catalyst team, but maybe we could put it out there as a request when you present the TPP, and maybe some of the Catalyst advisors may have people or suggestions and ideas.
That would be great. Thank you.
Charles, is that anything you wanted to add?
No, good idea. No, that's fine. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jenny or Nate? And again, thanks to both of you for great coverage. It's almost like, wow, are there possibly too many services and programs and activities and hackathons and fairs and things, but it's just an amazing ecosystem here in the Bay Area around entrepreneurship.
Great. Well, if there are no further questions, again, feel free to reach out to Jenny and myself. Feel free to explore Startup Tree. And we look forward to supporting you all in your entrepreneurial journey, wherever it is now and wherever you're liking to go with it.
Yes, great. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks.
Wonderful.
Great.
Thanks
Thank you
all.
so much. Bye.
Right.